So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and for joining our meeting. I think we are going to just kind of hit the ground running today. We've accomplished quite a bit, especially our last meeting, I felt, and was able to incorporate the feedback that you all shared. And then Stephanie and I had a quick little debrief this morning. So I think we're ready for today. And so hopefully this will get us in the right place that we need to be prepared to share out with the group on Wednesday. So we have 3 documents that I sent, the Campus Learning eSchool Polk Virtual side-by-side. So we will start there. And so if everyone can look at that document, I believe some of the things that have been cleaned up here. Let me see if I can switch screens and then share my screen as well. All right. So hopefully that's where everyone can see it now. Updated some of the feedback here. I haven't linked the documents yet, but created just more clean language. Learn more here, and then the link to the FAQ will happen, as well as updating the campus eSchool option is only kindergarten through 12. Had a follow-up conversation with some of our folks in our preschool programs, and at this time they do not have that flexibility. So we'll mark that for K through 12 only. If something changes, we'll certainly, update that. But as of right now, that's where we are. And then based on the feedback and some other discussions, had this piece where we lingered for a while about flexible class times for the eSchool. So we've got that check, went ahead and removed it, and then have some clarifying pieces there in the FAQ. So I think that was pretty much it for this document. Stephanie, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it. And then once we get clarification or any updated information on pre-K for eSchool, because we are going to have a contingency plan of some sorts if we have to shut schools down where there are preschools there, and what they're going to do. But I guess we'll have to probably talk with Maddie in that group to really flesh that out as well.
Yeah, and we'll touch base with them again. I spoke with Carrie, who works with Maddie, last week. And so, obviously when we closed down before, they flexed to virtual learning. And I think they would, in that situation, close it. Just not at this point in time, they still have that minimum 3 hours of face-to-face a day. So we can certainly update that as we get more information, but that's just kind of where we stand at this current moment. So with that said, I'll go ahead and stop sharing this screen and flip to our next screen. Okay, so now this is actually a new document. We didn't have this one last time, but it is built off of our FAQ that had the eSchool. And so I did take the feedback of the group and go ahead and mirror the order of the FAQs to the order of our rows on our side-by-side document to hopefully help ease that communications for families and our staff. And so basically went through the questions and answered them for campus learning. So I won't read all these to you, but we'll just take a moment to see if we have any questions.
Michelle, I had a couple.
Yep. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so the first was in the very first thing you reference, like the very first question, you referenced both campus learning and the campus e-school. And I had to look back then and see that this was specifically campus learning questions later.
Okay.
So I think that needs to go away.
Take it off.
See what I mean? Like,
Yep.
and so take out the both will be used in campus learning, utilized in campus learning there. And then a little bit farther down.
Thank you for catching that, Christy. I
was like, wait, which is this? Okay, when it talked about the participate in athletics or extracurricular activities,
yes.
It says, I thought it was odd because the point of this is they're going to a school, and it says with their zoned home school of record. I just didn't know that was necessary. With the school they attend, maybe, or something like that. Because you know, if you were physically here, you can't go play football for somebody else or whatever.
Yeah, and that's actually a question I think I added since our last
I think so.
meeting from the e-school. And again, I originally built it off the e-school and then just kind of copied and pasted and was trying to update. But we want to make sure, so we have to wait on information sometimes from FHSAA and other state bodies. And we want to make sure people understand that, yes, they can have the opportunity to participate as these things are available. Because if something were to change and they were not, we want to make sure we've kind of communicated that as well. So students.
Yeah, I think the FHSA part is very good, and I think mentioning that it's virtual is good. I just was like, why say with their zone school? Because they're going to be there anyway. Sorry, those two jumped out because I kept having to look back. Go, this is campus learning, right? So thank you.
Michelle, I had a question. It's Beth.
Hey, Beth, go ahead.
There in the portion where it says, you know, who will teach, we say it's going to be a certified teacher. So my question is, what is that going to be accurate when we have people like in my case who are the only teacher in that school, and those teachers for whatever reason are not going to be on campus, and we have to put, I'm assuming, a sub there. Is that accurate then?
Well, how do we word that when we have provisional subs in the classroom? Like, well, don't we have to send out letters like of out of field or?
But they're so the teachers are employed by Polk County Public Schools, and whether they're a provisional teacher or
it doesn't say certified, it just says campus learning teachers
are employed by Polk County Public Schools.
Yeah, I see what so Beth, you're saying in a situation where someone might have a long-term substitute. I think that's just the time where the letters that typically have to go out for those students would still be applicable.
Okay, as long as there's a letter or something that goes out, you know, that maybe the lessons will be supervised by a certified teacher, that kind of thing, which, you know, hopefully that will be what we're doing, that the teachers are writing the lessons and that kind of thing. I just think that although this is vague, you know, I think it also insinuates, it says that they are teachers. And that is true. We're not telling a falsehood, but you understand my thing. I think that there's an assumption there. So it was just a question in my mind. I think you guys know where I'm going with it. And I thought, well, if it popped as a question in my mind, it probably would to Paris as well.
Yeah.
So
I'll make a note to just kind of follow up, and even a conversation with Tedra to see because this is the same language that's also used in the e-school. But I think, if we had a teacher that was, the only, I'll just say, art teacher in the school in an elementary setting, and maybe they have a situation that doesn't allow them to come back face to face, but they're being supported by another teacher. I'll get with Tedra. We want to be clear and transparent in that, but I think just as we would run into situations in a normal school year, where a teacher might be out on maternity leave or something of that nature, and the letter that the principal is required to send, I think could still be applicable in that case. But I'll make myself a little highlight there so I can do some more research for us. So thank you. Any other things that we see?
Danny has something in the chat about the question. I think it's toward the very bottom. About in the emergency that we have to switch to eSchool. And then Danny has her hand up. So I guess, Danny, do you want to expound on that?
Yeah, I guess that's my biggest concern is that if the schools are closed for any amount of time, we have pockets of families that just are not going to be able to do virtual, like anything on the internet. From things that we've mentioned before, like babysitters or whatever, but also like I have a son with a significant disability, and we were not able to do packets with him. We were not able to do online with him. And so I'm just thinking, because my fear is that they just won't do anything. And that's probably my biggest fear for some of the students.
Yeah, and I think I know after listening to some of our whole child supports team meetings, I know they're working on some things as well. And we're going to have places where we need to follow up and potentially do something different. But I think if we try to capture as many people as we can with the eSchool learning format, and we also, as a district too, purchasing more devices, purchasing more MiFi spots for families that don't have the internet, I think we're going to be able to bridge that gap some. But I totally hear you. Like, that's not for some of our students with an IEP, for some of our students in different settings, or different circumstances at home. We're going to have to do something different for them. So we just need to figure out how that might be worded. That was when Stephanie and I actually kind of talked about that a little bit this morning on our call. And I know even in Miami-Dade County, they specifically list out students with disabilities, students in the bottom quartile, as being targeted to come back to campus face-to-face as much as possible. We want to be sensitive to everybody's needs and be sensitive to the situation and everything people are facing with COVID, but not quite sure how to capture that in a quick little FAQ. So if you've got some ideas on that language, certainly feel free to put it in the chat or.
Well, and I know we're going to have to look at, the students we serve at our center schools, right. and even our very high poverty areas. We know that we might have to do something different and it looked different, but we're trying to capture as many people in here in the eSchool as we can if we have to pivot in the event of a school closure, or even if the district as a whole has to close down, because we know that our students at our center schools weren't served the way they needed to be served, and our kids with IEPs and 504s, we need to do better in those areas. And so those specific populations might look different than this. And we might, look at how do we bring them in, or how do we use churches or community centers to help us with that in the event of a closure. Even if we can bring small pockets of kids back and identify those needs, if we have willing teachers that, can do that as well. But I think this is like the 30,000 level to try to get as many people as we can. And then we're going to have to, I think through the declaration of intent too, we're going to get a better capture of staff that's willing to be face-to-face, even in, the event if we have to do closed schools. There are going to be teachers out there and support staff that are still okay coming back in small capacities if we can with the Department of Health. And we'll have a better capture, I think, of, who is going to be face-to-face in our at-risk fragile populations.
Yeah, good point. So I just made a note for now that, and maybe I'll cross that over with Dr. Steinke and the whole child support team and see if they've got some recommended language that we might be able to add about our special populations to that piece. And then later, as we learn more about the pre-screening, cleaning, kind of more the facilities and health and wellness protocols, we'll add that in here too, because I think those are going to be questions that parents that are thinking about campus learning are going to have around, temperature checks, wearing a mask. And so those, I know our health and safety protocol team was just meeting. And so as they have updates, we'll add them here. Anything else on this document?
Michelle, I have a question about the Cambridge IB. I'm getting a lot of questions, obviously, because that affects me, my school. Is there any word? Are they going to come on campus for Cambridge classes only? I mean, do we have anything, or pre-Cambridge, pre-IB going to do at home? Anything? The teachers are very concerned about how to teach that level. So
I have not had an official update on that, but I'll follow up again this afternoon.
Okay.
So
particularly those that teach the junior
right.
senior level classes, they're the ones really concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I understand. So we'll follow up again on one.
Is there still a possibility that like, for instance, a student can come onto campus for their 2 upper level Cambridge and do the rest at home? Things like that. Has that been ruled out?
I don't think that's been ruled out. I think it's also contingent on the status of the school. So I
Correct.
think it depends on where we are with our counts with the cases, and if numbers keep rising, where are we, not only as a district, or in the event we have to do rolling closures throughout the year. Those are those kind of international entities that have a little bit more governance over our schools that participate. So I have not heard anything different since we last met on Wednesday. So,
okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, I think I'll quit sharing this screen and we'll see, we've got Amy. Go ahead.
On the FHS AA, the eligibility athletics, I'll look at the handbook and let's see if we can mirror that with and maybe you did already extract that language. I just don't want any school with all these details and so many different directions to get their sports out of compliance because someone's trying to possibly utilize this situation for their purposes. So I can look on that later and send you that dialogue unless you already extracted that.
No, go ahead. And Dan Talbot's also in a task force at the state level. And so we're trying to cross-reference that, but I would appreciate that, Amy, if you could do that as well. And we also have it over here in the eSchool document. So the same language is there. We did have a couple of updates to this document based on some feedback to kind of get some more clarity, especially around attendance. And so just clarifying that eSchool attendance is not optional, and that daily attendance is required and will be taken by the teacher. We kind of went back and forth a little bit about should we specifically say exactly by period, but that looks a little bit different at the elementary level. So in the event that we get any additional clarity on that, we'll add it, but we think we've kind of captured the essence of it's daily and it's required. And then the other piece about grades, again, we're following the grading policies of the district. Teachers will assign work and grade assignments accordingly. Late and missing work policies apply, and students will receive interim reports and quarterly report cards.
Michelle, can I ask about grades? I think I asked Stephanie, I talked about this. Will parents still see parent portal? Like, will they still see our grades and things like that? Or is it look different because of Schoology?
No, it'll still be the same kind of concept and same grade monitoring as well, whether they're eSchool or campus learning.
So what we post in Focus, they can see, and then they can keep up with it. Okay.
Yes. Is that same wording in the same spot? Campus eSchool teachers are employed by Polk County Schools. There's the same wording about athletics and extracurriculars.
See, I think it's more appropriate here because they are assigned to a school and they may not physically be at, so they may not see it. I think it's okay to say it here. I just didn't think it needed to be said when you're physically going to a campus. So
yeah, I appreciate that, Christy. I totally own and recognize that is my error of just copying and pasting. So thank you for catching that.
So before we move on, Danny had a comment and a question in the chat. And so she was saying when she's looking at the FAQ for the eSchool, there doesn't seem to be anything mentioned about packets or materials that are not internet based. And then how would parents know what options are open if they're unable to use internet materials? Many children in my area are with babysitters or daycare. So I believe to answer the question from what we talked about earlier, Michelle, is that when we push this declaration of intent out, we're going to try to get as many people to do it on their own as possible. And then we're going to start having schools follow up, calling the families that haven't responded yet so that we can get as accurate of a picture as possible. And then do you want to address paper materials, Michelle?
Yeah, I think we just, I think it goes back to kind of the other setting about special populations. I think as much as we can, we need to try to connect students with devices, with the connectivity through the MiFis. The quality of the level of work that we can produce in mass with paper-based packets is not the same as what we can do with technology. And so I recognize that. I think it was kind of at that 30,000 foot level again, not to keep using that same phrase, but really that's kind of where we are, is to capture as many people as we possibly can, and then go back and look at those populations that need the additional support and help. And so it may very well look different too. So that's where we need to just really be strategic with our resources, and let's employ as much as we possibly can through a digital platform, and then see where we need to go back and fill the gap. So Danny, I don't know if you want to share with the group, but are you hearing that that there's those families that are just not ready to send their students back and they still don't have the internet, or what are you hearing out there?
I mean, I've been going out to the camp since March, but I think that it's not just about like not having the internet. A lot of the people don't know how to use computers. The parents are illiterate. They don't speak English. These are young children, mostly elementary. So they need some structure, and they need kind of a person giving a little bit of direction to them. So that's been one of the biggest challenges. A lot of them don't have Class Dojo, stuff that would just, make it much simpler. And it's hard to do all that virtually or remotely to try to get these parents ready to be able to support their students. Yesterday, I had some parents calling me just asking, when is school opening? The kids want to go back.
Right.
And even in the highest point right now, we have a lot of positive COVID in our area. But my fear, it's not so much as just having the internet. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into this. Even with my middle and high school students, I had a larger percentage doing packets than doing online. And most of it was that they were working, they were watching a bunch of younger siblings. They couldn't keep up with meeting with teachers. And so there's a lot of other variables. But
Sure.
I would say in some of our areas, it's just, we have a high illiteracy rate, even in Spanish, with some of our parents. And that's probably my biggest concern is just, it's not just about having the device. A lot of them did check out devices, but then they didn't know how to use them. So it was just even more difficult.
Gotcha. Yep. And that's, so that may be, when we talk about addressing special populations and trying to figure out other ways, and even if it's sending a teacher to meet, with the children or and help them either learn themselves if that's where they're ready, and about how to do the device so that they can almost be self-sufficient with it, or going out there and doing some lessons with the students. So I made a note of some of those things while you were talking, and we can definitely follow up later. I know that was what some of the things in listening in on the whole group support or the whole child support team, thinking about our center schools and some of our other students. Maybe they have a disability, or another special population that we've been hearing more and more about is our students that are involved through the Hearth program. And they may have, moved or had situations that have changed during COVID. And so meeting the needs of those groups may have to look a little bit different. So we recognize that, and definitely are willing to figure it out. And I think we're in a better place too. We learned a lot of lessons from Q4. And so hopefully moving forward, we'll do a better job with some of that as well.
And I agree with Danny in the fact that I was seeing exactly what she was seeing, but I also agree with that last comment, Michelle, and everything that you were saying. I think we can do better. And so knowing what we did, I would like to try to use the paper base as the last resort and see how we can think outside the box. Because I felt like the kids with the paper base, I felt like they were all alone. And we would see them when they'd come out and get their lunches and interact with them, or if they'd come up to school and they had questions with their computer. But, we got all we called all our kids, and then we found out after the fact, after we put people on paper or people on computer, that we had the Wi-Fi buses. So we could have put a lot more kids possibly using those Wi-Fi school buses, which was a great idea. So again, I think schools probably a lot of lines of what you just said. We just would like to do better and see, even if we have to, again, like you say, send willing people out to the kids and hold a little tutoring session if we need to, just to get them up and started. But there are a lot of dynamics surrounding those communities that are, I don't know, about 90% of our kids. It might be greater for me. It's more probably about 30% of my kids experience these things daily. So, but I agree, if we can, paper base should be there, last resort, but man, I would like to try to do something different with them.
Yep. Thank you. Just wanted to also bring up that, we are still operating under that. We don't know that we'll have any USDA waivers extended through the regular school year. So the wording on that piece about free breakfast and lunch, unfortunately is no at this time. Of course, bus transportation is not really needed if you're doing e-school. It should be 100% at home. And then,
Michelle.
Yep.
Michelle, someone asked me on the food, if we have to pivot, will we be able to fairly quickly pivot to providing food like we are now?
Yeah, I think it's one thing if we're closed and it's a
Correct. They were
yeah.
concerned about that. If they said they heard we might get sent home if it gets bad, which of course is true, would food be available? And I said, I assume we would be able to feed. It might take a little while to get it set up, but.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm trying to also look at the chat because I see we have some other questions. Stephanie, can you see the chat better?
For eSchool, don't we have to log in? The kids will have to log in on a regular class schedule, like if they were physically in person.
Correct.
That's the commitment the parents would make. So that was Beth's question.
Yes, and then I see Lois put, Lois has a comment about potentially opening community centers. Yes, that's, something that we'll look into. Another thing, if we still have the Wi-Fi buses going out, even setting up next to a bus is also a possibility. Kind of how we do, I'm getting some feedback. How we do Books Bridge bus when they go out into the community and can do lessons. So that may be an option too.
So Michelle, it's Beth again. And to Lois's thing, I've got two different churches. One is in North Lakeland and one is in Fort Meade that are interested in helping with the internet type of thing, and I'm working on that too. But to my question on the academic expectations for the students, it's on page 3. It says students are expected to log into Schoology and complete their weekly instruction. It sounds like weekly.
Yeah,
Could we add the word daily in there? Students are expected to log into Schoology daily and complete their weekly instruction of each.
What I'm looking for it. I thought I removed the word weekly.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, we're using the word weekly because that was kind of confusing.
Yeah, I may have caught it on the other document and not this one yet.
I think it's toward the bottom.
It's right in before parental monitoring. The question is right before that. So on the third. Yeah. I just,
Okay.
I think we need to make it's not clear that they have to log in daily, even though we say up top that there is, the regular school schedule. It also says, but we know that not everybody can log in at the same time, blah, 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 blah. Because of your, number of devices, maybe we need the word daily.
Okay.
I don't know. Food for thought.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have other items in the chat?
So, Roderick is asking that his concern is if schools will have enough devices for both eSchool students and those attending campus learning.
Yes, that's a concern. So I know Dr. Barrios and the team have been ordering devices to get extra devices for our district, as is every other school district in the nation. So ordering them and them arriving is what we're closely monitoring. And then as students complete their intent, then we'll know better also. One of the questions, we'll get there in a minute, is do you have your own device or do you need a district device? And so capturing that information will help us with that as well.
And then Lois was asking, is there a person at the district, if they have community nonprofit organizations that are wanting to create programs for parents to provide supervision? Do we want to add them into that Excel document, into the task force, or is there a person we can direct them to?
Yeah, I think if we want to, for now, add them to the Excel, and then Steve Cochran and Kim Long from Polk Vision are actually have kind of broken off of a group and are working on that for Mr. Hill. So we can make sure we get them that information as well.
Okay.
It's like
And then
Trace.
Tracy has a question about hours. Do you want to unmute Tracy?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Stephanie. Just that one section, Michelle, where you guys say elementary, middle, high. Not all middles are 9 to 4, and then our K-8 friends are a variation of that.
Yeah.
So maybe we could say the hours will remain whatever they are at their home school, or I don't know the best way to say that. But if you say 9 to 4, that's not accurate for a lot of them.
Right. I had the same concern. I think so. Stephanie had and some people had made a recommendation to put some hours in here so parents would see. But I said the same thing. Even some elementaries are 7:45 to 2:45. So I don't know if it's capturing that generally elementary schools operate, or if we just want to say they'll follow their regular.
Follow your current school of enrollments hours.
Could we do that and then put a hyperlink there with all the schools and their hours? Like,
I don't, that link would have, it wouldn't be a singular link because it would have to go to each individual schools.
well, no, could we just put an attachment there with the bell schedules from each school? I don't know, but and especially I'm thinking more like perhaps for new parents, like the 5th to 6th grade parents, or the incoming kindergartners, or the 8th to 9th grade parents. They may not. I don't know. I just think we need to clean that up so there's not confusion. Just my 2 cents.
Got it. Does that sound? Campus e-school hours will follow the schedule of the brick and mortar school. Website.
Yeah,
should it say their? Should it say their brick and mortar school? Because again, our point is that they're all different.
Yeah. Would follow their corresponding brick and mortar school.
Well, it'll still be their school of enrollment, right? I mean,
yeah.
Maybe just say
their school of enrollment.
Right. Thanks.
Okay. And then Christy had 2 technology questions.
Okay.
Michelle, could you scroll to the so I can see what you've got the most current to see if it. Okay, so the one I saw, let's see. It says that we're starting to give devices. Go down a little bit. It was about this. It was something about devices.
Laptops will be distributed.
What happens if my student does not have technology at home? And so we said we're going to distribute them beginning on August 10th. I assume if we got them earlier, we might be able to do that. But here was the next part. Can more than one student do their learning at the same time in Schoology in one household? In the thing, if you look at the way you wrote, it says, however, if each child does not have a digital device, parents may want to stagger their access time on the computer. That goes directly against what we're saying. We were saying that each child would have to do the schedule during the thing. Okay. So, you know what I mean? I understand. I think you were meaning things like freckle or you have to log so many minutes, but that almost sounded like it said if you've got 2 kids, they can take turns doing their schoolwork, and that wasn't the point of this.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think just eliminating that sentence is fine. And then all the things that are highlighted in the teal color, they'll have to be revisited with dates, you know, as we get that a little more firm.
Because if we're going to get our letter of intent, if they're going to declare their intent soon,
They
you know,
should get it before.
Yeah. Now, the line under that, can my student access the question under the one we just did? Can my student, my little box is on my, sorry. Here we go. On tablets, can they use a Mac computer? It says, yes, all district platforms must be accessed through ClassLink. Shouldn't that be Schoology? Or do we still have ClassLink?
I think we still, is Tina, are you on the line? I'm not sure if Tina, so I think they go through it's because ClassLink is our single sign-on. Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but Ms.
I can't hear you, John.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear us?
Barely.
How about now?
Yep, we can now.
Okay, so ClassLink is our single sign-on for all applications. Schoology is one of those applications, and several of the applications like Teams and Google Classroom work within Schoology. We're in the process of determining which application. Ideally, we'd like as many to be accessed through the one interface, but what we don't know is we haven't tested all of that, so we don't know if Freckles in every application currently works through the interface. And then the other challenge that we're working through is when you use Schoology, there may be some features when you log in through Schoology that don't work exactly like they do if you just go to the application itself. So we're working through all of that. So we don't, the answer is we don't have all of the answers, but we will use ClassLink and Schoology together. I would say that we would bring everybody into ClassLink, and then we would take away the links in ClassLink that we're using through Schoology. But we're very early in getting this platform up and running.
Okay, because I know that some people had a very bad taste of ClassLink. I think it's fine, but I know that word is going to bring it. I just didn't know if it was outdated or if it was true. So they'll actually go to ClassLink before they go to Schoology?
Yes, because when they log into ClassLink, that one login gets them access to most of the applications. There's a handful of applications that require them to log in again, but by pointing them into that one interface, they're accustomed to going to ClassLink and finding what they need. What we're doing with Schoology as a learning management platform is trying to funnel as many of those applications that work within the Schoology application so that they don't have to go out to external links. But again, we're literally 4 weeks into getting this platform up and running. So there's a lot we have to learn, and we're working as fast as we can to get it set up.
Okay. Everywhere else it's been Schoology, and that ClassLink popped up, and I was thinking Schoology was replacing it. So that's why
it is not.
Okay. So should we say everywhere else that they're going to log on to Schoology? Because it sounds like they're going to have to log on to ClassLink first.
Well, we'll clean that up, and some of that is kind of why it's still highlighted, just because we just don't know yet, like which area they're going to first or what they might. So Tina and I talked, and that's all the things highlighted in teal.
Okay.
Teal for Tina's world. No, we're all working together, but we know we have to go back to those. So, but good feedback.
Thank you. That was just, I read them last night, and I figured I wanted to look at your latest thing on the line, so I make sure.
Yeah, no.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Danny, do you still have your hand up? Did you want to chime in? Okay.
No, sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just checking.
And then the green there, we're still, again, that's kind of a Schoology and Dr. Steinke piece and some other folks in the whole child team that we're working on that. Brandy Gogol was involved. So we've got some people working on that piece. It's just a matter of making sure it's worded exactly the way we need it to be worded. And then I think the parental monitoring piece, need to fix that Eschool.
Michelle, I just realized there was something earlier that was about what happens if my child does not participate or something like that. And I can't remember how specific that was. Like if they don't participate and don't.
Are we going to mandate or require them to move into campus learning if they're not being successful with eSchool after the first quarter?
I think
it's just going to be a conversation.
I think it'll be evaluated on a quarterly basis. But I think, you know.
Oh, here's the section. Yes, right. I see that. Yeah.
If it doesn't log in or complete the work. I think those are going to be conversations that have to happen at the school level. And, you know, what's the best fit? And then also taking into consideration what the parents are comfortable with. So.
And then Lois put in the chat, have we addressed the issue of whether we're still considering a possible emergency pivot from campus learning to virtual as eSchool? So I know when we had our smaller discussions, we had talked about maybe there's a difference between somebody electing right now whether eSchool is the best for them or whether it's forced on them in the event of a closure. So like if a family is wanting to do face-to-face learning through campus learning, but they're made to pivot to eSchool because of a closure, would there be maybe more flexibility in that emergency move versus them electing to do eSchool now, knowing up front that they have the resources to accommodate the structure?
Right. I would think so, but I think we're going to have to flesh that out in the ICP.
Okay.
So I'm making a note of that, like just emergency eSchool status versus
because I know
selected.
One of the ideas we had in our smaller group that maybe would go in the ICP would that, you know, if they can't, if a family can't follow the structure of the eSchool model because it's an emergency move because of a closure, that maybe they have to, and they can't, they would be strongly encouraged to participate in the live lessons and learning, but obviously all of those are going to be recorded and put up. That they have a time frame that they view the recorded lesson and do their participation that way. And that can be fleshed out in the ICP. It doesn't have to be in the FAQ.
Stephanie, can you hear me? I think I've unmuted. Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you, Lois.
Okay. My concern about the emergency eSchool versus the choice of attending eSchool is that if there has to be a sudden pivot from campus learning to additional students coming on to eSchool, those two programs really have to be completely separate because the staffing of the eSchool option will be based on the parents who voluntarily enroll their children into that program. And the rest of the campus learning students and faculty will have to pivot to that, but to mix the two together is going to be a mess because if and when people can return to campus, that's almost like having to revamp the whole thing with every pivot. So my question is whether that emergency, everyone's going to stay home now, is really part of eSchool, or is that a totally separate entity?
Yeah, that's a great point, Lois. And I think we're going to be able to differentiate that selection for students and focus. And so in talking to DJ Dines and some of the information she's been getting and how we might schedule students in the master schedule, I think we will be able to keep those units separate. But I did make a note of that to follow up, but you're absolutely right. There's going to be a big difference in that self-selection versus an emergency status. But I do think we're going to be able to sort that out and focus. So that would, and hopefully, depending on how the numbers work out, as much as we possibly can, kind of keep those teaching assignments pure as well. Although we know we may have some courses that are unique and the teacher may have to kind of support both platforms, but as much as we can, separate those two out and then mark them accordingly in focus. So good point.
And then Tasha, I think this is on the side by side, Michelle, that I think when you were typing in on Wednesday last week, you had typed in extended transition. Was that on the side by side?
It is still there. It's under the same row with the IEP and 504s. And actually, and that also came up in Dr. Steinke's group. Okay. And so we, in a separate conversation, decided to put it all together. And then she's got some breakout pieces from her group as well. But yes, it's still there.
Okay. Okay. And then I guess when we hand out devices or during that time frame window, would we also be able to hand out other like consumables or textbooks, for textbooks maybe that aren't online?
I believe so, that we would do that probably through a drive-by status, like we've done. We've used that model in elementary to pick up like their summer learning packets and things of that nature. So I'm sure that can be accommodated. I know some schools did that with picking up their cap and gown. And so I think our schools actually did get better at those processes and learn some things. So I don't see where that would be a problem. Might just be a matter of capturing a list of who checked out what book and maybe barcode numbers, and so we can capture it in Destiny. But yeah, we can work out those logistics.
Okay.
Anything else on this document before we switch to the student questions? Okay. Does somebody have their hand up? Are we good? Or maybe that's old because I just turned off my screen sharing. It could have been.
I don't see anybody with their hand up right now.
Okay.
And you can also just unmute yourself and jump in.
I know we're not doing FAQs for Polk Virtual because it's an established thing, but I've heard comments from people that teach at Florida Virtual that say they do different procedures as far as classes and stuff than Polk Virtual, and they feel like their students have a better completion rate. So I just had wanted to mention that because they don't have them take all 7 classes at the same time, and some differences in that. But I know that's an existing type thing. So we're not, like they're working on that. But if we do really have a lower completion rate for Polk Virtual than Florida Virtual, could we figure out, and maybe we don't, but could we figure out what's different and how we can do it? So.
I think we just have to be careful with that, because if a student goes Florida Virtual, then we've lost that funding in Polk County. And so we want to encourage as many families, if they're thinking about that as more of a long-term option, to choose Polk Virtual. And I know one of the reasons why we didn't do a separate Polk Virtual FAQ is because Mr. Williams and the PR team have been working diligently to kind of add information to his website and keep it up to date and answer and address some of the questions that are coming up now with the added interest. And so I think just linking them to the website will get them the most up-to-date information. And I believe he's planning on having some information sessions virtually as well.
We definitely want to keep the money here, but we want to make sure that we're giving them the same chance for success they would have at Florida Virtual School, with the understanding we won't offer every class Florida Virtual School does. So that's why when I've had friends that teach now at Florida Virtual that say they changed the way they did things and the kids complete a lot more there. So that's all.
Okay. All righty. Well, what I'm sharing with you now on the screen is definitely a rough draft. I'm trying to frame the opening paragraph. You can even see where I kind of stopped mid-word there. So I've been working on this yesterday and today. So essentially the opening piece will be the message that goes out to families through School Messenger. And then the registration questions are listed below. And they're just in this format now because we will put them into a Google form that will allow us to capture this information at a district level as well as individual school levels. So when we build these forms and we have the drop-down menu of school names, it allows us to sort by school, and then our assessment accountability office can drop the spreadsheet for the schools into their respective SharePoint folders where we typically share information from assessment accountabilities directly with the principals and administrators at the school. So that just kind of gives everybody a little background and will allow us to see kind of on a global level and then drill down even to individual schools, grade levels, etc. So that the schools can really get a feel of their students and who's answered and who they need to reach out to. One thing we're going to try to encourage families to do, and this is a challenge at times, is that student ID number. So it's on their parent portal, it's printed on a report card, or they may have to contact the school and just give them a call. So if any of our principals have feedback on that, most of the time our secondary students know their number. But sometimes in the elementary level, they don't know that number yet. So, and then basically we get to the which learning option will your child participate in for the fall, campus learning, campus eSchool, or Polk virtual. And then depending on how they answer that, if they answer that they want to do campus learning, then it's going to trigger questions around how will your student travel to school in the morning? By bus, car rider, daycare van, walker, and then the afternoon as well, because we know that's different for families. This is a piece that's still in draft form with transportation. We just looked at a couple of the questions that Manatee have posed. I don't know that that's going to be relevant for us because we can pull this information off of our system once we know who the student is. I don't think it's necessarily relevant for us to ask them about some of these special programs. But then if they answer yes to B about the eSchool option, will you need a district issued laptop? Will you need a district issued Wi-Fi hotspot? And then if they answer yes to C, which is Polk virtual, I still am working on a prompt to point them to Polk Virtual's website because that's a different registration route. So I think that you all had I think Christy had put some of these questions in our OneDrive last week, and then we just kind of built them off some information we need to capture as well. So this is hopefully getting to be in its final steps and ready to get over into a form and hopefully be ready to then be translated into Spanish and Haitian Creole and then get out to our community soon. Feedback on any of those questions?
So Amy's asking, should we add the mile radius mark for transportation?
I'm waiting to hear back from Rob. There has been some discussion about that and courtesy riders. So Rob had his call earlier with that group that he's in with operational protocols, and they were actually still going when we started. So he and I'll connect in just a bit.
And then Tasha had said that gifted was missing.
Yeah, I don't know that we, is that on this form for Manatee?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know that we're going to need to capture that because it's already in our system. Once we have their ID number,
That's
we
on
can
focus. All that's identified.
Yeah, we can link to all that. Those were actually just screenshots as we're kind of looking at what are some of our colleagues doing and researching what other districts are. I just hadn't deleted them yet just because the transportation section wasn't finished, but I don't really anticipate that we'll need that because the information's already in our system. But thanks for noticing that.
Lois, I know, I'm sorry, not Lois, Michelle, I know John Miller, I think it is, has reached out. I've gotten at least 3 emails verifying, my daughter will be Cambridge 9th grade, you know, verifying the transportation. Are you sure? So for those special programs, IB in Cambridge, and I assume Harrison, that information is probably already captured as far as the ones that might be coming from a long distance.
Yes.
Assuming they stay with the program. So,
right. Yes, we're able to see, you know, like where a student lives and what route they're assigned to. We have the technology for all that. Our survey is more of, or our registration is more of a, are you planning on riding the bus or are you planning on getting to school a different way, so that Rob can then maximize his seats and try to do as much social distancing on the bus as we can, while still keeping in mind that, you know, in our district, we face other geographical challenges that some districts don't have to contend with. So, yeah, it's more about getting a number for Rob and his team.
Under the, if they choose the campus learning, Lois brings up that after their transportation questions are asked, or before, or somewhere in that section, we need to capture if they need a laptop or Wi-Fi in the event that we have an emergency closure.
Okay.
So would they need a device or a Wi-Fi hotspot in the event that we had an emergency closure?
Good point. Get that taken care of. Thank you. Anything else?
I feel like we need to have a very, very, very short turnaround on this, but start telling people, like, I assume this would go out, say Monday, either this Friday, the 10th, or Monday the 13th, and go live, because it sounds like we're wrapping things up. I don't see any reason why we don't put a deadline of a week, but start now saying it's coming next week, it's coming next week, knowing that we're going to have to track some people down, but there's nothing wrong with encouraging people to hurry.
Yeah, Stephanie and I talked about that earlier too. You know, typically, I know we're not calling this a survey, it's registration. But typically when we do a survey, the majority of the people answer within the first 3 days. So, and trying to accelerate that timeline, you know, we know timing is of the essence. And so I think we need to have our meeting, you know, on Wednesday morning with our broader group where we share out, you know, our thoughts. But, you know, that's why we've been working, you know, as a team so hard to get all these drafts ready so that we're in a better place to kind of hurry up and move forward. because we do need to know and be able to make, make our master schedules and things work with the numbers, and still lots of moving parts. So agreed, we need to probably have a quick turnaround time on this.
Michelle, I don't know the specifics for elementary. In your transportation choices, you say school bus, car rider, daycare, van, or walker. There's no need at this point to capture which daycare, is there? Like, is that something the school will do then?
Yeah, the school will get that
Okay.
later.
And then, we know we're going to have to track down, families and students with this survey. Are there enough staff on campus right now between principals, APs, 12-month secretaries, or do we need to maybe think about bringing other people in on like an activity log to help make calls?
Yeah, that may very well be a possibility. We kind of talked about most of our 11-month APs. I don't believe they come back until the 20th.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the time of year where we're on our skeleton staff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a possibility. But one we'd have to get with Mr. Perrone with about funding and things. So.
Well, and again, we do have CARES Act money that is, meant for this type of stuff. And we also possibly have, the Polk County County Commission, got relief funds too, that we have parts of that we could use possibly for this, but that is a Mike question.
Yeah, I don't want to speak out of his area, but I know a lot of the funding, it's like anything else. It's, there is a budget, and so much spent on PPE, so much, even thinking about busing, if we have to run more buses, because you can only have so many students on a bus. I mean, the costs quickly add up. So I just don't want to commit to something, without his full knowledge, and, but yes, and it may be that there's, other 12-month staff in different departments, the ESOL department, they may be able to help out. Some of them are 12 months and could go help and make some calls. So there may be other creative ways we can approach the task too, with people that are already working.
Okay.
Will the survey be available in multiple languages?
Yes, we typically do all the things that we do in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. Those are our most utilized languages, but we know that there are some different languages and dialects that we don't always capture. So they will have to, have a phone call.
Okay. Well, let's we can put that on our list to talk to Mike too, to see if we have enough coverage by pulling in people that are already working in a 12-month capacity, or if we do have some funds to bring people in like on an activity log, for a couple hours to help us make phone calls.
Sure. Will do. All right, so I think as we think in terms of preparing for Wednesday, when we will have a time to share with the larger group, when Stephanie and I were talking earlier, we thought about just go ahead and ahead of time sending out our documents that we developed as a work group, and then maybe spend the majority of our time just speaking around the one-page side-by-side. Because it kind of captures just the essence of our choices in a more broad perspective, and then allowing our colleagues and the other groups to ask questions. So if everybody's good with that, they can give a thumbs up or agree in the chat, and we'll plan on approaching the task that way. So if everybody's good with just emailing the documents, I'm happy to do that. I'll make the few tweaks that you all recommended today, and then we'll do that.
Using volunteers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That might be a way. Thank you, Miss Littles. That's a good idea. That may be a way that we can utilize some of our volunteers to help us out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And
then
thank you, Amy and
wants to know
Christy.
when we're gonna probably have this ready, because I know PR is anxious to make everything look as pretty as possible and as user and reader friendly as possible.
Yes. So I have an update after this, get some information from Rob, and then hopefully Jason will get it over to you guys. I need to also, give an update to Mr. Hill, and then we'll go from there. So hopefully we'll have it to you soon, Jason.
Do you know from the other committees if they're going to be dropping documents for us to look at before Wednesday?
I'm not 100% sure, but that I haven't asked either, so I don't want to, I'm certainly not throwing any of them under the bus or anything. I just haven't, I haven't asked, and I was able to catch a little bit of the operational group meeting today, and because one piece kind of had some crossover with us about the impacts to the classroom, and social distancing in the classroom, and making recommendations about scheduling models and things. Making the recommendation to not use lockers, different things like that will impact instruction in some way, shape, or form. But I think that's when we come together on Wednesday, that's where we'll really flesh out those details. And then just so the whole group kind of knows, the plan is we'll come back together Wednesday in our big group, get everybody's feedback. And then our task force will really probably take a pause, if you will, because we will need time to get the registrations completed, get Stephanie and Tedra have work to do as far as negotiations, and Mr. Milhorn. And so that work needs to carry on. And then we kind of need to get to a point where we've got some feedback to give on how we're doing. And so it may be that we don't meet for a couple of weeks while those other working groups kind of pick up, and then we go from there. I see Christy's got, what about completing the ICP? The district's working on that, and then that may be one item that we come back to either later as a work group. But the main things, a lot of what needs to go into the ICP, you all have already helped structure the big thoughts. And so some of it's just the tedious work of getting it into the document and into the format in which the state is requiring us to do. So yeah, I think the big global pieces for the ICP, we're good, and we're going to keep working on that. And we'll go from there. So any other questions, comments, concerns? Hey, Jackson. So yeah, we just really want to thank everybody for your time, for your input. It's been great to work with you all and to get your feedback. And we will share it out with the group on Wednesday and see how that goes. And then we'll just keep moving forward and know that we're doing the best we can for our students and our staff in very, very challenging and unusual times. So hope everyone stays healthy, and we'll see you all Wednesday morning.
Yep.
Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you all.
Yes,
have a great
thank
afternoon.
you.
We'll see you guys
You
on
too.
Wednesday.